Hello, Willowbrook family. Today we are reading from Acts chapter 12. Have you ever had a person or a situation in your own life that was in great trouble? It weighed very heavily on your heart. So you begin to pray. Well, the solution seems so impossibly far away, and you really don't know exactly how to pray. You're serious about praying, but things are so heavy and so impossible that you're not really sure what to reasonably expect. This chapter starts much in the same way, heavy and unsure. Herod, who was the grandson of Herod the Great, had discovered that he could gain great favor with the Jews, and thus with Rome, if he persecuted Christians. So for purely political and selfish reasons, he arrested James, who was one of the original 12 disciples, and put him to death with the sword. The loss of their beloved James was a huge blow for the church, and they were about to receive some more bad news. You see, Herod's execution of James was so popular among the Jews that Herod was eaten up by all this positive attention. So he arrested Peter, put him in prison, and had planned to execute him as well. With this news, the church started praying, and praying earnestly. The Greek for earnestly is ektenes, and it literally means to stretch out, continual, intense. It's the same word used by Luke to describe how Jesus prayed in the garden before his death when he began to sweat drops of blood. So very intense indeed. If you remember from Acts chapter 5, all the apostles were arrested, but an angel of the Lord released them from prison. Well, Herod was not about to let that happen again, so he assigned 4 squads of soldiers to guard Peter. 2 were physically chained to Peter, and 2 were outside the cell door. Now, scholars differ on whether there were 4 guards rotating every 3 hours or 16 guards all at one time. Either way, it seemed impossible to escape. The normal procedure was only 1 guard for 1 prisoner. Now, believe me, whether it was 4 guards or 4,000, it did not matter to God. So, on the very night that Herod was set to execute Peter, an angel of the Lord in a bright light suddenly appeared in Peter's cell. And he didn't even notice it at first because he was sound asleep. Now, on a side note, have you ever noticed how Peter could sleep at the worst times? He was asleep right before the transfiguration. He was asleep when he should have been praying with Jesus in the garden. And now, just hours before his death, he is sound asleep. But I guess this time, he was at rest with God, because no matter what happened, the Lord would be glorified. The angel had to actually poke Peter to wake him up. But Peter was so drowsy that the angel even had to remind him to get dressed because they were leaving this place and they were leaving now. Peter's chains miraculously fell to the ground, and Peter and the angel walked right out of the cell, right past all the guards. So even when they arrived at the front iron gate of the prison, it was opened by the hand of God. And during all this, the church was praying earnestly for Peter. It wasn't until Peter was down the street and the angel had left him that he realized that this whole thing wasn't just a dream. God had miraculously freed him from prison. So Peter went to the house of Mary. Now, Mary was the mother of John Mark. And when Peter arrived, the church was still praying earnestly for him. So Peter knocks and knocks at the gate. Well, the prayer warriors on the inside probably thought, who is this person interrupting our important prayer meeting for Peter? So they sent a servant girl to find out who it was. And when she recognized Peter's voice, out of her joy, she didn't even open the gate to let Peter in. She ran back to tell the house all the good news. And you know what? Even in the midst of all that earnest praying, they didn't believe her. You know, they actually thought she was kind of crazy. You know, maybe in the back of their minds, they knew that a positive outcome for Peter was so remote. Things were so heavy, so impossible. and they weren't sure what to reasonably expect. And all during this time, Peter keeps on knocking and knocking. Finally, they go see for themselves, and lo and behold, it is Peter, safe and sound. And I can't help but think that there is a message in here for all of us. When an impossible situation faces us and we start praying, I wonder how much time we spend listening to God on exactly what to pray, especially when the situation is so pressing. An important part of earnestly praying is taking the time to listen to what the Lord tells you what to ask. When I obey that voice, I will often find that He wants me to pray in such a way that I would normally not have the courage to do so. So, when God's answer to your prayer walks right up to you and knocks on your door, you won't be surprised. Have a great day in the Lord, Willowbrook, as you pray and as you listen for God's solutions for your needs.